This is AndyTube. Before I get started with this video, I just wanted to thank all of the people and viewers and subscribers that offered so much support to me and care and prayers concerning this Bell's palsy. I really appreciate it. It was incredibly kind. And I'm feeling much better about it. I kind of got a handle on it now, and I'm a lot more relaxed and less worried about it, which probably will help me even heal up faster. And I'm expecting to do that. So, thanks again. That being said, now let's get into Coco Goes to the Spa, Part 2. Coco Gets Exfoliated. When I looked up exfoliation in the dictionaries, they all talked about removing dead skin and scales and layers. And layers of stuff to be removed is exactly what we find in these vintage singers to varying degree. And it's usually old oil and grease and dust and lint and sometimes smoke and animal hair. And if you happen to catch my series on 347 for Jen, you can see some really yucky stuff that I found one time. But I just call it KRUD, and for quite a while now my go-to cleaner has been the KRUD KUTTER product, the original concentrated cleaner and degreaser is what I use. Recently I've had a few people tell me that they've kind of used this method, but they're using a project called Go Joe, and that's safe for the black singers, which I will not use KRUD KUTTER on, and please don't try to use KRUD KUTTER on a black singer. And they just kind of paint it inside and out with a paintbrush and then go about the rest of the treatment method that I use. And they say it worked real well, and you can leave it on the paint because it won't start dulling the paint like KRUD KUTTER will if you leave it on too long. So some of you may want to try Gojo. I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds interesting. When I get into exfoliation, it's really what I call pre-treatment. And I have a number of little tools I use when I do. I like these wire detail brushes. Especially I use these on the gears and any really hard, thick, dry grease and oil. There are 2 for $1 at the dollar store. I use my old toothbrushes to get in areas. They're a little softer. And I use some bristle brushes and like a lint brush that I got also the dollar store. I use this wheel brush, like an automobile wheel brush I found. That's kind of cool and can get up into areas that are big enough for it. And it was $1. I sometimes can use my the old kitchen sponge that my wife has finished with. I usually use like a softer artist brush to get the stuff into some areas. And some friends said that they also have used these, 10 or 20 for $1 cheap foam brushes. So I got some of those to try. Gloves, because if you handle the KRUD KUTTER, it doesn't really hurt your skin, but it's a degreaser. So it will dry the skin out. It'll pull your body oil right out of your skin. So you may want some nitrile gloves. I have this little curved syringe I bought one time for a couple of bucks in case I want to squirt the greaser or alcohol or other stuff into little holes. So I use that sometimes. I use old rags if I need them. I have some paper towels on hand. Things like that. I think that's enough to give you an idea. And look, you know, you're using chemicals and brushes, so it can flick into your eye before you can blink. And especially since I can't blink my left eye, I'm using some, you know, like protective eyewear. And you certainly should do that with tools and chemicals. So let me kind of clear this area up here. And what I put down is usually I put the junk mail, you know, grocery ads and hamburger joints and stuff that I can't keep out of my mailbox. I put that just to protect my desk. And I usually put plastic under it, but this time I put this white plastic on top. So if we get a lot of drippings here, I can show you how much KRUD is coming out as we go. So I've got that ready, and I put this bag over Coco just so the tools would show up better. But there she is. And before we get started, I know what I'm going to do, but you maybe would have a decision to make concerning the electrical parts, the light and the terminals and plugs and stuff. I just don't believe that they should get wet with the cleaner or water. Although I was talking to a friend this past week, and he doesn't take the screws out of this. He pulls the motor, and then he just uses my treatment. And he says that, you know, he washes it and blow dries it real well, and it hasn't hurt any of the stuff. So if you want to try that, okay, but I'm just worried about the long-term effect, because he usually fixes them up and sells them real cheap and uses the money to play golf, you know. So I don't know what you know, a socket or a terminal or inside that wiring would be like in 3 months or a year. And working my whole career with wiring and electricity and voltages, I know water can certainly damage electromechanical stuff. So you have a choice. If you don't want to take out the wiring, which a lot of people told me they don't want to or they were nervous about, you need to protect this stuff. And I have done this. You might see a couple videos on my channel where I will, you know, put a plastic bag around the part or the connection and seal it up as best as I can. And I wrap mine with electrical tape. Just, you know, 2 rolls for $1, and seal it off as best I can. And I think if you watch the 403A slideshow that Shelly did, she wrapped her stuff very well and just left it in the machine, and she said it worked fine. And but I got tired of doing that after the very first time, because you got to tape it all up and then wash and dry the machine and then get all the tape and bags and everything off. So I just started pulling the wiring. And if you saw any like the 404 I did, the wiring splice up here where the light lead wire comes from the terminal wire on the side, they were like a crimp splice. But on the 301s, they're actually just wire nuts, you know. So let me show you a picture of this wiring, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so now you have an idea of how that wiring is in there, and I'll leave it up to you if you want to wrap the stuff with plastic and tape, or I'm going to show you right now how I take it out. And then you could leave it in like my buddy said he does and take your chances. But the wire nuts are very easy. It's a nut, so it just unscrews. And the idea with it is don't pull it, just lefty-loosey. And like a bolt in a nut, it'll lift itself off, just like that. And then you probably find the wires twisted together a little bit, so you can just keep turning them left and dress them out a little bit to even them out. And it's better to hold the wire as close as you can to the bottom of the wire nut, so that the wire itself doesn't twist much. And there's the other one, just like that. Just little black wire nuts. So I'll untwist those two leads. I want to save that wire because it's kind of short, I noticed, in the 301. They were a little more generous in the 4 and 500 series. But now that you've got that light lead wire removed from the wire nuts, you can just pull it straight out the grommet, just like that. And then this is real easy to hand clean later when I clean the parts. I'll show you how and stuff. But you see how easy that came out? So that's, to me, it's a lot quicker doing that than all the bagging and taping and so forth. And then down here, I showed you the picture down here where that wire comes down the channel, and it it loops under the motor holding tube to go up to the terminal on the side. So I kind of pulled up the slack. So before I laid it back, I should have pushed the wire down in there a little bit with my finger. But then you're just gonna pull it. Let me zoom in here. You're just gonna pull that loop that goes under the motor, and it'll pull down from the top. Okay, and then you've got your little 2-pin terminal off, and what you're going to do is push that right out where the 3-pin is. And you took the screws off out there, and you're just going to maneuver the wire away from the bracket. Let me turn this around here so you can get a better view. Okay, and just work that right out, which you'd have to do a little bit to tape it up and bag it. So now you can you have a room to pull the 2-pin and the little plugs for the motor pins, and then the wire that goes up to the light, and you just got all of the wire out. It's done. And it's easy to clean like this when it's not attached to the machine. And if you got funky pins, you can get in there with metal polish and clean them up and so forth. So that's it. And I even reuse the wire nuts. They're fine. If you want to put fresh ones on, that you can do that. But I don't bother with that. So now I have everything, the wiring out of there, and I could start my pre-treatment. And unfortunately, this machine at some point in time had one of those dumb foil stickers that every sewing shop loves to put on there for free advertisements. And they're usually a lot more modern than the machine, the sticker. And they use a totally different glue. A lot of the old tape and stuff like that I can get off with peanut butter, sewing oil. WD-40 is good for that. The Triflow oil. But I tried over on this corner, and it was a real hassle. So even though I don't like to use volatile organic compounds, when I get something like this, I find it is worth my time just to use goof off, which, you know, naphtha, I don't know, lighter fluid, something like that. It doesn't seem to hurt the paint, and it seems to get it off quicker if you use, you know, one of these little soft nylon scrubbies, if you have one. And so I'm just going to rub it right off there. I don't know, can you see that dark, kind of dark smudge right there? So the KRUD cutter doesn't do glue that well. I don't know if the Gojo would. I'll have to ask somebody. So I squirt a little of this on the sponge, and then I just go right after it. And what's that, 5 seconds, and it's gone. And I'll double check. Oh, I got a little bit up in this corner here. Let me get a little bit more up in there. I was trying to impress you, wasn't I? That'll teach me. Let's see if I can get that off now. There we go. That's smooth. I have some cloth residue, but that'll come off with the KRUD cutter. So when I get really bad glue, adhesive, especially the more modern stuff, that's how I handle that. Okay? So we're looking pretty good here now. And I have found, like the very first time I used KRUD cutter, I used it on a white Singer, and you know, I sprayed it all over the outside, and then I got into the gears, and I said, oh, I better brush it and stuff. So I think the stuff was on there 5 or 8 minutes, and when I rinsed it off, I saw I lost some of the sheen of the enamel paint, or what I think is enamel. I mean, it just dulled it a little. So I bought some plastic polish. I didn't even need like a rubbing compound, and went over it a couple times, and it brought it all back. But you know, that was another $10 in an hour. So I learned not to leave it on the paint, and if it's only on there a short time, it does okay with the paint. So I like to protect the paint when I do this pre-treating. So I've got a tall kitchen trash bag here, and I cut one of the corners off of it here, about 4 inches from the corner, 4 or 5 inches. Just cut that triangle on the, like what would be the bottom corner of the bag, and I'm going to slip this over Coco. So maybe I can back a little bit so that you can see it a little bit more. I slip this over the Coco and pull the arm through that hole. And what I'm trying to do is, if I'm working up on the arm and I don't want anything to drip down on the bed, and I don't notice it, and then the next thing I know, I've got a couple of dull spots. So I'll raise the needle bar, lift the presser foot, and I'll kind of slide that top that's showing up. Yeah, I'll slide that plastic like up here, what's the top of the bag, over the bed like this, and then I've got some protection for the paint. Now to keep this part up here, I just take a rubber band and slip it up over the arm, and come back here and wrap it around that garbage bag just under the arm. Get over here a little bit. And hopefully that's going to keep most of the KRUD cutter from, you know, running down the side of the upright. And if it does leak from a screw hole or something, I'm protected. So that's why I do that. And then once I'm like that, I'm going to lay Coco on her back, and I start with the bottom, because often the bottom is the dirtiest and the gears are the worst. So let's set it up like that, and we'll start the pre-treatment. Okay, now that I've got the paint protected and I'm ready to start with pre-treatment here, what I use is I get a small amount of 100% solution of the KRUD cutter, and I have a larger amount of the 50% of the KRUD cutter, and I got all my brushes and so forth set up. I've filled an injection tube with the 100% of KRUD cutter, and I'll just put one more little drip thing here. And I like to start with the gear and the bushings. Those are usually the worst, so I start with them. And I'll take my brush and I'll just start applying some of this 100% KRUD cutter to that area. And I have found over time that I'm spend more time with the pre-treatment than I used to. And I think it's because it's a more controlled environment, and it's easier to get some of these troubled areas. And I find it works best for me like that. And then I'm going to go by the oil points and the bushings with this 100% and just get it started. Now the 301 and the 301A and the 404, like that, they have a lot more simple mechanisms down here. Like I said, this only has the one set of gears over here, where some of the others have double gears. Now if you're working on a machine that has pulleys and a belt and stuff, you're probably better to remove those. If you saw some of my like 347 videos and stuff, you maybe saw me do that. I get a little bit more up here on the gears. Get that started. Okay, I'm going to take my injection, and some of the oil points actually have holes, so I like to squirt a small amount of this right in there till it runs out a little bit. And it's my attempt to be sure that I get inside there and flush out. You know, some of these machines have been sitting in one place for years, and the grease will settle to whatever bottom area is, and it can get really hard and yucky. So I want to give it a chance to get in there and soak out. Now that I've got that, I'm gonna go over to my 50% solution and just kind of start painting everything under here. Whoops, get the 100. And because all the extra oil has dripped down around the machine and hardened and so forth. And I'm going to get up in the motor tube. Later I'll spray some in the shower, but I like to get in that area. And if you have dark, heavy areas where it's thrown off grease, I would use the 100% on that to, you know, to start breaking that up. Just give it a nice wash here. And as I think I commented about the Go Joe. one of the viewers wrote me that they did this, but they just used Gojo inside and out, and they said it worked real well. I think she used like a shorter bristle paintbrush maybe, and did it like that. So I got some spread around now. I'm going to take my wire bristle brush that seems to work the best, and I'm going to start. Now be sure you're wearing eye protection. I have goggles on, but be sure you're wearing some kind of eye protection here, so that you know, especially when you start using a brush, the little bristles can like flick all over the place, and you can get stuff in your eye before you know it. So I'll go back to this 100%, and I'll start trying to get in here in these deep grooves of the cut steel gears. And I'll turn the upper arm and rotate them and just try and get in there real good, because stuff really gets embedded over the years, and you know, people don't clean off the old lube, and they put new lube on top, and it just, any dirt and grime just gets ground in and ground in and ground in. So this has been very effective for me. And with the motor out, you can turn the arm, you know, where the hand wheel would be, you can turn it either way, towards you or away, because there's no motor involved. Yeah, I see a lot of stuff starting to come off now. Hey, that's the whole idea, right? And of course, sometimes after you do this, the area ends up looking more messy than when you started, because you thinned it out and it's dripping dirty water all over and flicking little chunks of grease and stuff all over. But don't worry, Coco's going to be taking a shower, and all that stuff will come right off. Well, this is looking much better already. Just a couple minutes into this. And I'm going to go back and I'll use the softer bristles on these little areas that I know get built up oil and dried stuff over the years. And if you don't have a wire brush, you know, you can use the, you know, like a toothbrush or a nylon bristle brush on the gears too. I just found it's quicker and does a more effective job using the metal brush for that. I wonder if you've ever seen anybody do anything like this. I think the first ever machine I used like 2 bottles of alcohol and a 1,000 piece package of Q-tips and a lot of hours. The results were okay, but I decided, man, I got to find something that is like more effective than this. Oops, I see a spot of some built up grease up here. Okay, now up in here are the shafts, the rocker shafts, and the vertical shaft that come down from the top. That's why I picked up this wheel brush. It's really made for the wheels on a car, it said. But I like to get that because I can get it up in there and scrub those brushes. Because oil and grease will drip down them from the top. You know, and I'll still spray in there, you'll see in other videos, but getting a little of this brush action in these areas means I'll have to spend less time with her in the shower. And these are just the brushes I use. If you have other type of brushes, you know, bottle brushes and whatever, you know, use what you like to get in these tighter areas in here. And the little crevices in the back side of stuff and tight spots. Now I always go back over the gears a little bit more. I want these gears to last forever. You know, they were cut and meshed and polished as pairs at the Singer factory. And over the years, that mesh has become more complete due to just running together all these years. And I was told, don't ever change the mesh. You know, if you have to take a gear off to move a shaft or something like that, don't change the mesh. Mark it so you can put it back together the same way. Because if you change it, I mean, it'll work, but it won't be as quiet or smooth. Now, plastic gears aren't affected that way, but the cut steel gears are. So I like to try and get all of that black stuff in those teeth out of there. And it's worth doing in the pre-treat. And then, you know, if you wash the whole thing and they're still in there, and you've got to go back and get it all dirty again to clean it out. So, but they're looking really good now. And once in a while after the shower, I'll go in there with a barbecue stick or wood or plastic, and I see I'll miss one or two. But I sure like to get the bulk of it out of there. And maybe I'll just double check all of my worst spots and get a little more wet and just go over them with the nylon brush real quick. But they look good. What's surprising is some of the machines that didn't look too bad. You know, this machine didn't really look bad down here, but after I cleaned it and seen all the the crud that's flowed out of it, I was really happy I did this, because I was like, wow, that's a lot more stuff in there than it looked like, or that I thought would be in there. Okay, let me move this out of the way now. I want to set Coco back up, upright, so I know that a lot of this stuff is going to come out, which is why I put protection down. Oh, wow, can you see that? I wonder if that's showing up on the camera. That's just from the pre-treatment. Okay. I think I'll work on this, move my rubber band system down here a little bit, and I'm going to protect this, try not to get too much in there, but this hand wheel area is always real bad. So I kind of like using this foam brush because it can bend around and I can hold a lot of KRUD cutter on there. I just pre-treat that area pretty good. It looks like it's cutting everything right away. Maybe I'll take a little bit to the threads and grooves on the arm. Well, you know what? That's kind of stubborn too. So I'm going to go to 100% and brush out those threads. It's kind of like the same thing as the teeth on the gear, right? Gets down in there and gets dried and dirty and embedded. Okay. Now, you can't see it too much in here, but the grease got thrown all around from the old gear. So I'm going to go in and pre-treat some of that up at the top here. And get that soaking to soften up. And I'm trying to think how I can get you a picture of this top, because I'm gonna treat the arm up here now. Let me check the camera. Oh, that's pretty good. So you have gears over here that are reverse of what are on the bottom, and the top of the vertical shaft down here has a horizontal gear that's, you know, tricky to get clean. So I definitely like to pre-treat these, the top of these shafts and the gears here with 100% and get the old stuff starting to soften up. And let's see if I can go over here and turn those gears about 90 degrees and get some more, especially on that darn bottom gear there. And I see on the wall down here that grease has been thrown off for years, and it's interesting to see the different greases in these machines that people have used. I even had a lady tell me that she'd been using olive oil for the last month. Wow, was that a mess. You find some white stuff I think is all dried up lithium. You'll see that sometimes. Okay, then here's my little foam guy. I'll just go in and do some more on these general spots. But you maybe see now why I cover that bed with plastic, because I don't want this stuff to be dripping and left on the paint for a long time. And after I do the arm here, I'll be doing the nose. I'm going to try my softer bristle brushes in here on this grease, up around the top of the motor shaft. It's starting to get all softened up, looking pretty good. I don't use the wire brush on any painted surface. And there's another greasy spot here and here where that's thrown off grease over the years. Get my 100% now, and I want to start polishing or scrubbing off the arm shaft here. It's just like the two on the bottom we did. It's kind of in reverse position. I see little flecks of that dried black grease flying off of here. This one usually isn't as bad as the bottom, but it can be. So I just try and get it well cleaned. Now, as I said, you see it's really hard to get to that gear in the back. But do your best, because the time spent in pre-treating or exfoliation pays off in the long run. It's looking good. Okay, I'm going to get up around some of these shafts here and the bushings, and there's my squirter. This goes down to the main bushing, so I'm going to shoot some in there. The main bushing up on the front. Get some in there, almost forgot that. Let me give you a little better view of it there. This is just the screw hole, but these are the bushings. And I'll spin that around in there. And what you'll find is as you get the old stuff out of the bushings can get harder and harder to turn because they're losing their lubrication. But don't worry, I've had them totally freeze up. But after you wash and dry the machine, you know, you're going to go ahead and oil and lube it, so it'll come right back. Okay. Just a little bit more maybe on that gear. This gear is a darker metal than the bottom one is real silver, and this can be a little more black, so it's harder to tell without a close inspection if there's stuff left in the teeth. So, you know, and when you're doing this, you're going to have a better view than me. You're not going to be dodging the camera and everything, so you'll be able to tell if you got all of it or most of it out. Just make sure this, yep, that's just stuff I put on there that got loose from me putting on there. Alright, I think I'm about ready to stand it up and do the nose here. Let's take a look at that. Go ahead and pour out any more of that stuff. Oh, see if I can stand this up a little bit so you can get a better view of the nose. Is that too high? Oh, that's too high, sorry. How about that? Is that better? Not much. There. That looks better. Okay. So I'm going to get this all slopped up now with the degreaser and pre-treat it like that. Now, I usually take all these parts out, but I'm doing this for the people that don't want to do that. So, you know, I'm not going to be able to get in here as good, and I'm not going to be able to scrub it as good. So maybe now the pre-treatment and a little soaking is even more important if you're not taking out the needle bar and take-up lever and pressure bar and lifter and stuff like that. So just get it in there then the best you can. Slop it in there and exercise that and turn that crank and try and move that up and down through the bushing. Maybe I'll put some on here and turn that needle bar down. Try and get it to drag down inside there. And if you want to treat your tension, you know, you're not taking it off, you want to slop that up good, go right ahead. And then of course we'll try to get the brush in here, but you're not going to be able to do it as well. So you can see why I encourage you to take the parts out. And if you see the recent slideshow that of the pictures Shelly sent me, you know, she said it's one of the most rewarding things that she did in a long time. And she was encouraged after seeing the slideshow I did of Sharon's 301. And Sharon followed my 404 tutorial because they're very similar machines. And she stripped it right down. You know, and she said a couple months before she'd never even touched a vintage machine, and here she was taking parts off of it like an old hand. Nothing to it. So I know if you ask those two gals, they would tell you go for it. You know, do it. It is very rewarding, and the machine will be sparkling and so like a dream. Like Shelly said, so's like a dream. Okay, well look, I think you're getting the idea of what to do here. And I will say, any other part you want to take off, you can look for my over 50 videos I did of the 404 and tell you how to take every one of these parts off and how to put them back on and how to adjust everything back to the factory specs. But even doing this is going to be a huge improvement for your machine. Alright, this is going to wrap up part 2, the exfoliation. In part 3, Coco's going to take a shower and get sprayed with about a 25% solution or 50% of the KRUD Kutter, and she's going to get all the other grease off, and then get a blow dry and then a moisturizing. So I hope you'll tune in for part 3 to see how that gets done. And if you don't want to wait, you can, go look at that 404 tutorial, which will go into a lot more detail about parts. And let's get this off of here. Does that show up? Oh yeah, look at that. It's all over, and that's just from the pre-treat. Good. Look at that. Didn't look that bad, did it? But wow, look at all that junk. Whew. That's bad stuff, isn't it? Man. So we're happy to get all that out of there. Man, it even smells like old grease. Okay. So thanks for tuning in. Look at that, just from dipping the brush in it. And I hope you come back for Coco Takes a Shower. Thank you so much. Comments, welcome, questions. I try and respond to everybody. So I'm just going to be uncovering this now, and if there's anything that's leaked through onto the paint, I just wipe it right off. Don't want to let it be sitting there, so I'll inspect that. Thanks guys. See you for part 3. Take care.